Hey, shalom, everybody. We'll wait just a couple minutes and see who else is joining, and then we'll begin. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So the purpose of this group is to educate and allow or afford you all the opportunity of creating an Elon for yourself. So this first call, I'd like to just explain to you all a little bit of history behind Elanot, as well as provide you with a resource to obtain your own scroll, a blank scroll, which I encourage everyone here to obtain one, especially if they're serious about actually making an Elon. And to describe some of the very first phases and explain to you what exactly it is that you are writing down. It's very important that when writing an Elon, you actually understand what it is you are writing. So the first part, because we're in a capacity call, and I can't actually show my camera here, I will be just providing a couple of images inside of the group chat, and so I'll ask that you guys take a look at those photos. So the first one, anyone here who's serious about writing Ilan, I encourage you all to obtain this safer. It is fairly expensive, but it's worth every penny. It is called the Kabbalistic tree. Now, it's important to understand that any person who is teaching Kabbalah without an Ilan is false to the Hachamim. Any person who claims anything about Kabbalah who does not have an Ilan, he's false to the Hachamim. This is because the sages state explicitly in a variety of different places, especially in the higher levels, that Kabbalah can only be taught with an Ilan. These Elans sometimes are called Ilan Katan or Ilan Gedal, which is to say large and small. The word Ilan comes from the Aramaic word for tree. So I'd like to educate you all and just give you a little bit of background, and perhaps if enough requests are given, I'll perhaps make a video, maybe on the main channel as well, hopefully educating individuals about the nature of this. The first thing I'm going to tell you, I'll show you an example of Elans throughout the past 1,000 years, that this was a close practice. Initially, these Elanot were only allowed to be in Jerusalem, which means that you would have had to have traveled to Jerusalem in order to have access to any of these Elanot. It was an absolutely closed practice. Most people had to be bound by various oaths, so on and so forth, in order to actually join an organization, which they were like Jewish secret societies. You can almost like the Jewish Illuminati, but something way above there. You know, Illuminati means illuminated ones, and some say that it comes from those who studied Bachir. The Bachir means illumination. So perhaps that will give a little bit of context behind it. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of it, so give me just a minute. So I've just provided an image of an Ilan. I will provide a couple of pictures of it. This one primarily deals with the gates of light. This was a disciple of Abalafia. So it should be uploading for you guys in just a second. Okay, so I provided an image inside of the group chat. I'll ask to direct your sites over there. So we can see at the top, I sent a picture to get a little bit of it. You see an open eye, and you see the word Ein Sof. And you can see this particular arrangement is Kether, and directly beneath it is Chokmah, and directly beneath that is Bina. So obviously, this is the arrangement of Ari Kainpin. Many different places there are different arrangements of Sfirot. Not all the arrangements of Sfirot are the same. We usually kind of associate ourselves with the standard positioning of the Sfirot, where Chokmah and Bina are kind of at an equal level, but this is not always the case. The Partsufim vary dramatically. For those of you that may have seen my most recent video on the illimitable one, you will have seen that I showed a diagram of one of the Ilan of Ramchal, who depicted Ari Kainpin. And this right here is a depiction of Ari Kainpin. On the very bottom of this Ilan, I'll show you. You can take a look at a picture there. It shows the mazalot, which are the arrangement of all of the stars, the kokabim, the chambers, the melachim, and I'll get it, maybe perhaps a very, very close-up image here for you guys. Let's see if I can catch one that doesn't have a glare to it. Okay, if you will avert your attention to the most recent photo that I just posted, you'll see there are 4 characters. Those 4 characters are obviously Rabbi Akiba and his entourage that entered into Pardes. And so this scroll is a depiction of them entering into Pardes and going in through the gates of light. This particular parchment was from Italy. Italy was a massive central hub to Kabbalah. It has been for thousands and thousands of years. There are stories of Rabbi Akiba going into Sicily, so on and so forth. Italy has always had a very, very intense population of Kabbalists, and this particular Ilan is an example of one. So I'll go on to a couple of others and give you guys some just brief examples of what they look like, so on and so forth. Here's a depiction of the Simsum. Many of you guys have probably been familiar with this. Now, in my videos, many of you will have seen Ilanot and the scrolls. So what many people don't know about me is that I have the privilege of being involved with various esoteric safers, either doing artwork for or translatory work or contributing in some other way with some of the rarest safers in the world, and some that the Western audience has never received translations for. And this includes doing some of the artwork for safers like Sadiq Isa Haolam, other safers like the Mystery of the Engraved Letters, both variations of Andros HaTananin, one by Nathan of Gaza, another one obviously by Ibn Tabul, which many of you will know is inside of the Book of Dragons, and many other different types of safers like this. So it's very important. These types of safers and those levels are not available or accessible here in the Western world. The Western world virtually knows nothing about real Kabbalah. Everything here is Kabbalah with a Q. That is to say, Hermetic Kabbalah, which has essentially just culturally appropriated ancient voracious Jewish Kabbalah and applied their own understandings to it. And same thing with Kabbalah with a C, which would be the Sufi version of the Kabbalah, which of course has also been culturally appropriated, but has been interpreted mystically through the Quran and the Hadiths. But actual, genuine Kabbalah, there's virtually nobody.
Everyone out there, all the rabbis and all these people that quote unquote read Kabbalah, none of them know anything. They don't have the merit to speak on anything because they do not have an Ilan. If you do not have an Ilan, you have no merit to talk on Kabbalah. Kabbalah, real Kabbalah, is a science. Those who have the merit to speak on that science must have an Ilan. No Ilan, no authority. No authority, your opinion means nothing. It's like a brain surgeon. It's like a child has, invite parent to school day. And the parent comes to the school and the children in the class say, "What do you do?" And he says, "Oh, I'm a brain surgeon." And one of the kids offer their opinion about brain surgery. Well, they don't have a medical license, so whatever they have to say is irrelevant. Very much similar to true Kabbalah. Kabbalah is very holy. It talks about Torah Har Sinai. Torah Har Sinai, the Torah that was given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. We know that he was given a pattern because it's written, and you will form and create these things according to the pattern I showed you on the mountain. Everyone talks about Oraita Shabbalte, oral Torah. He's given explanations as to what these things in the Torah mean, so on and so forth. However, we learn that it's also, in addition to these things, it's written, I'll give to you, create all of these things according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain. This teaches us that Moshe Rabbeinu was shown a supernal pattern on the mountain. This supernal pattern is the most closely guarded secret. It was passed to the 70 elders, which are the numerical value of the word sod, meaning secret, yayin, meaning wine, and from the elders to the prophets, and from the prophets, so on and so forth, to the Hachamim, so on and so forth. And it's been passed down all the way from Har Sinai. These are the true receivers of the supernal and divine Torah. On Shabbat, Chaim Vital would roll out a scroll, and then he would instruct his disciples according to the scroll, and then immediately the disciples would go during the weekdays and they would make their own Ilan, their own scroll, according to the teachings that were laid down. Many of you have probably seen some of them. If you see them online, you see people toting about them and so on and so forth. It actually comes from a direct lineage of Rav Naftali, who was another disciple of the Arizal. He wrote a sefer called Emek HaMelech. Most of its contents are in Aramaic, so using a Google translator will not work on it. Although the majority of the main corpus is in Hebrew, it is still cryptically written and incredibly difficult to read. It was one of the first sefers that I learned to master, was Emek HaMelech, which is exactly when I talk about the 231 gates. I can immediately determine where a person's Lurianic Kabbalistic understanding is at based off of those aforementioned. Obviously, anyone who's seen the library that I've shown in a couple of videos knows that I have all the writings of the Arizal. And this all has to deal with mainly the corpus that was laid down by Chaim Vital, but anyone who's truly initiated knows that the Arizal had more disciples than Chaim Vital. And they also know that the Arizal told each one of his disciples different things. For example, Ibn Tabul was given the secret to the Tanin Gedal, which is why I was involved with the translation of Drosha Tananin, and the only person to have ever produced an interlinear translation of the Sefer. There is no person who's ever done this. But in the Book of Dragons, the entire thing is there. By interlinear, I mean verse by verse, line by line, where Aramaic, English. The same thing with other sefers, like Emek HaMelech, who is Rav Naftali. Certain keys were given over to him, specifically keys that are involving the 231 gates. This is going to be a major key to understanding the esoteric mysteries behind the Ilans that, Hashem willing, you will all be producing and learning the true authentic systems. They're only hinted at in sefers like Eitzheim. So I'll share with you some of the other Ilans that have been given out throughout history, and they've had some various evolutions. Some of them dealing with certain parts of themes at certain levels, and other ones dealing with higher faces, so on and so forth. Adam Kadmon, so on and so forth. So let me see if I can bring this in. Here we go. Okay, here's another
picture for you all. So this is another example of another Ilan, the Scroll of the Worlds. Many of you are probably familiar with this Ilan that I have. It's very possibly the only one in the world. I'll share it with you all. It's made out of gold, 24 karat gold to be precise. I'm going to share it to you all here again. And it came from Jerusalem. So it's very imperative to have these different Ilanot. I'll give you guys an example of the top. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the top of this one Ilan, and we can compare it to the teachings that we've learned a little bit. So I am assuming every person here is relatively familiar with the teachings that have been on the channel, and relatively familiar with the concepts what's inside of Likute. So at the top of this Ilan is going to be our main key. I shared it to you guys in the next picture. I know it's a little blurry, but it says Sfirot, right? Al Malbush, right? There's this Sphiros of the Malbush. It's very hard to see. Perhaps I can get a better image for us to see what's going on there. This is going to talk to us about the 231 gates and what we call the heart spark. Let me see if I can get another image here for you guys. Okay, it's another image on the top right. Oh, here we go. And here's a large one for you all. Okay, so these are spheros, right? Shel al spheros shel olam hamalbush, right? The spheros about the universe of the Malbush. And for this last image there, I'd like you guys to just open it up. And I want you guys to see where it says Resh Lamed Aleph She'arim, right? 231 gates. The reason why I'm talking about this 231 gates and showing you guys this is because 99.99999%, literally 99.99999% is probably even higher than that. People who talk about Kabbalah honestly have zero idea what they're talking about. Zero. They know nothing. They know nothing. It honestly should be. It should be like a crime. It's like a spiritual crime against humanity. It's like a person practicing medicine that doesn't have a degree in medicine, right? You have no paper. You don't have a degree to show that you are licensed to practice medicine. That is what an Ilan is. An Ilan is a demonstration, a key degree, as it were, to show mastership and authority in a specific subject. It shows that you are qualified to dispensate and to teach on authentic and true and genuine Kabbalah. Unfortunately, Kabbalistic terms were embedded in the Tanya. Baruch Hashem, that's good. Many different sefers have very different, varying Kabbalistic terms, so on and so forth. And so people have all of these ideas of what they think things mean. You hear people talking about Atzilus, Bria, Tzirasiya. Everybody has their opinion about a thing, and everyone presents themselves essentially as a Kabbalist. This is the most erroneous, foolish thing a person could ever do. It is written, a sage is preferred over a prophet. When somebody says, I'm a Kabbalist, is the equivalent of saying, I can make the prophet Yeshayahu. I can make the prophet Yechezkel. Okay? When you take that moniker on yourself, you say you're a Kabbalist, you are saying, I have received perfect understanding from Torah Har Sinai from Hashem. You're saying that I can teach the Torah at the highest levels, and I can make the prophet Yeshayahu. I can make the prophet Isaiah. I am greater than the prophet Yeshayahu. I am greater than the prophet Yechezkel. That's what you're saying. Do you see how erroneous that sounds? Madness. So any person who even mentions says I'm a Kabbalist, immediately disqualified. The second you say you're a Kabbalist, you're done. You're done. You've already disqualified yourself. You're a charlatan. No, there's no talking here. Same thing on the other footnote. If a person is said to have been a Kabbalist, they have no Ilan, no scroll, immediately dismissed. They have no opinion. Even if they have an opinion, they say, well, this, that, or the other thing. I think that, no, irrelevant. You're not qualified. It's like a person in middle school trying to give their opinion about how heart surgery goes, how open heart surgery is performed. Right? Who's in the wrong? If I go to my son's school for meet the parent day, and I'm a brain surgeon, and some 8-year-old kid gives his opinion about brain surgery, which is obviously irrelevant and doesn't matter. The kid is entitled to his opinion, but it doesn't mean it means anything, right? And I accept this kid's opinion about he thinks it should be this way or that way, and I listen to the kid, and I perform the next brain surgery doing what the kid says, and somebody dies. Who's in the wrong here? Is the kid in the wrong, or is the doctor in the wrong for giving any type of authority to a child who's unqualified? Obviously, the doctor's in the wrong. To even accept the authority of the child is the fault of the doctor immediately. And so it is with Kabbalah. To accept the opinion of any person that is not qualified to speak on the matter, meaning they have an Ilan. Oh, I studied under my Rav, this, that. No. Are you qualified? That's like saying, my uncle's a doctor, so I can practice medicine. No, you can't practice medicine because your uncle is a doctor. Oh, my teacher was a doctor, but you're not a doctor. Therefore, you should not talk about a subject you are not qualified to speak on. This is the nature of Kabbalah. For thousands of years, in an unbroken lineage, they have been passed down. These esoteric mysteries have been passed down. All the way up to Rav Keduri. Rav Keduri, if you see his Kameot, he too writes down the Ilanot. I'll give you, this one's written by Rav Keduri right here. It's by his hand. I'm sure everybody here should be familiar with Keduri. I sent a photo into the group so everyone can get a look at that. This is written by the hand of Rav Keduri, right? He has an Ilan. Because he has an Ilan, he's qualified to talk about the subject. So when I go look at ancient Ilanot, I will see in their Ilans what he's written on his Ilan. Why? Because he's received the same tradition that goes all the way back to Har Sinai. This tradition was very, very few within Jerusalem itself, within the Holy Land itself, and even less few outside of Jerusalem to have been actually instructed properly into the creation of an Ilan. So I'll give a couple more examples on that. So what I want to say, going back to that first image when it says Spheros Shel O Hamalbush, I want to say the Spheros of the garment, the universe of the garment. And it says Resh Lamed Aleph Sa'arim, the 231 gates, right? I talk about the 231 gates nonstop. 99.99999% of people, when I talk about the 230, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And that should be expected because they're not a Kabbalist. The Western world, their only understanding of Kabbalah has come from Tanya, has come from words of other Rabbanan who've said this or that. But true Kabbalah? No. Never. Never here in the Western world. There's a single example I can even think of. The closest would have been Rav Yehuda Ashlag. The closest. And some of this stuff that they did in the Kabbalah Center before the Kabbalah Center fell into useless nonsense, philosophical garbage that has no merit, no structure, no form, no science, no authority. It's all just philosophical me-dote hoobly-glob. But no real science, right? Some people call it the royal arcana, the divine science, the king's science, because essentially it's the science of God. It's what they study in Olam Chaba. It's the level of the Torah they talk about the highest levels. So one of the first things that will be brought up, especially as you guys begin to create an Ilan, is going to be this Sfirot Shel Olam HaMalbush. the sphera of the universe of the garments. So I want you guys to just go back to that image, not the image of the one with Ilan from Rav Keduri, which just shows that he has the merit to talk about what he's talking about. If they have the Ilan, and I'm not talking about you bought an Ilan online. Like I'm not talking about like, oh, I have a Kamea, I bought it from no. By your hand. Demonstrate personal mastery over the subject before you speak on it. If you have that personal mastery over the subject, then your opinion can be acknowledged. If you don't have that personal mastery over the subject, then you have no opinion. Again, this is very much like a doctor, right? You have a medical license or not. I'm not talking about rabbinical license. It's a whole different thing. I can tell you all day about whether it should be this or that, linen or this or linen or that, or is it clean or not clean? No, I'm not talking about that. It means nothing at this level. Not that it means nothing in life. It's just at this level, just because you're a rabbi, irrelevant. Because when it comes to this level, most of the rabbis have no idea at all. Most of them don't even study Zohar. You listen to some of the Rabbanan, they don't even study Zohar themselves. They have no idea what it says. In Zohar, you have to know Zohar like your ABCs before you can start studying any real Kabbalah. Let's start with Ludianic Kabbalah. And that's even incomplete. I mean, Eitz Chaim sounds like pure madness because it requires an Ilan. It requires a scroll. So I'm going to go and show you some of these other Ilanot, and we'll get into some of the concepts behind what should be on the beginning of them. And I'll provide you guys with a resource to obtain your own scrolls. We can actually move forward with the progression of the scrolls. Again, this first call is to give you guys some historical background, the importance of the authority of having them, what it means. It is very sacred to have an Ilan. Very sacred thing. It's the most holiest object you could ever have is an Ilan. And Ilan is a direct connection highway to Olam Haba, to all of the Olamot. Not just one, all the Olamot. Not Rachiot, not Shemaim, the heavens, firmaments, all the Olamot. Okay. Very, very big deal. So when I talk about the spheres of the 231 gates, which we can see on the picture that was shown there, when I'm talking about tree on top of tree, I'm talking about the fronts and backs of Sphirot. Nobody in this Western world knows what I'm talking about. Only a charlatan. Abraham Lincoln says, it's a famous quote. I love this quote. He wasn't a Hachamim by any means, but nonetheless doesn't mean that he didn't have good general wisdom. It is better to keep your mouth shut and be thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and be proven as one. Any person who thinks that they know what the 231 gates are, because keep in mind, this is from Emek HaMelech, okay? Emek HaMelech is a sefer that's it's in Aramaic. It's very obscure. Who knows about Rav Naftali, one of the chief disciples of the Arizal? Nobody knows about that sefer. Emek HaMelech, you have to be a great Hakamim. And then this great Hacham, you're going to be in Israel. You're not going to be here in the Western world studying a sefer like that. There's nobody in the Western world studying a sefer like that. It's madness. So for anyone to even talk about 231 gates, it's madness. Madness. They're just regurgitating. They've stolen something like a thief. They speak on something they don't understand. They saw it and they stole it. The concepts that are being readily available to you all. When I'm talking about Botzina, Kartnuta, I'm talking about the heart spark, I'm talking about 231 gates, I'm talking about tree on top of tree. These are the absolute highest, apex, loftiest levels of the Kabbalah. Levels that the Western world has never, ever, 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 ever been exposed to. Never, ever, ever, ever seen. If you are a rabbi, if you are a Jew in the Western world, you know nothing. You know nothing. They don't teach any of this stuff outside of the Holy Land. You're not in Beit Yosef. You're not in some prestigious yeshiva. You know nothing. They don't teach the rabbis out here. They might as well be strangers, zarim. You're an outsider. You know nothing. You grew up in a secular world. You aren't clean enough to know those levels. Which is why the Rabbanan in the Western world know nothing about this level. Because they don't know the sefers. They're not encouraged to read those things because they're considered unclean. They're surrounded in a klipothic environment. And it's not for them. And if the Rabbanan here don't study even Zohar, they certainly don't study those levels of the Lurianic. And if they don't study the Lurianic and they don't study those levels of Zohar, then you think their congregation knows anything? The guy who goes to the shul? No, not at all. Not at all. But only in ignorance will they speak on these things. Only in ignorance, a great detriment, will they speak on such things. To open their mouth, to have an opinion about any of these things. You're not qualified to have those things on. Because it's like spiritual death. So, I'll show with you guys some of the other examples of Ilanot that have gone through time. And as I said, these Ilans date back, track recordly, over 1,000 years. So here's another great Ilan of the king. Yes, it's not just a rite of initiation. It's like making an Ilan is the equivalent of having your rabbinical license in Kabbalah, right? So just like you need like a rabbinical license in order to carry out conversions, without an Ilan, you cannot speak on Kabbalah. It's impossible. You can't even have an opinion. I mean, you can, right? But just like any charlatan could uphold, whatever they want to about rabbinical rulings, this, that, the other thing, and hold conversions or whatever. It just means that at the highest echelon, at the highest levels, it's not recognized with any serious severity. It doesn't hold any weight. It's not respected, right, at the highest levels, and for obvious reasons. So here's and of course, no pressure for any of you guys. It's actually a great wonder because in terms of the Western world, I am without question the only person in the Western world who has been instructing secrets of the Ilan and actually know how to do it. There's not a single soul in the entire Western world. Any person here in the Western world talking about Kabbalah, internet this, internet that, Kabbalah this, Kabbalah, they know nothing. None of them have the lineage, the yichus. They don't have the merit to speak on any of it. And even though fools speak against it, this guy doesn't know this, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's like being offended at the opinion of a kindergartner, If I'm a doctor and I go to my kid's school and one of the kids in the back say, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking. I'd be the fool to be insulted by the child. I'd be giving him too much authority, too much credit. You're very welcome, Shoshana. You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Gila. So here's another photo. Here's another photo here so that you guys can see it, and another depiction of the king. You guys can see it's Hashem emanating himself, it's creating himself, right? You guys can see the top. It almost looks like the King of Hearts. You can see arms and legs and a head, and because what's the opposite of an uncreated thing? Obviously, a created thing. That was the purpose of the Simson, to bring forth into existence what God is not. God is a unified singularity, relevant to multiplicity. What's the opposite of an uncreated God? A created God. A God with limbs, eyes. Did not see, and God saw the light. What did he see it with? What eyes? How did he stretch out the heavens with his right hand? Oh, he must have a hand. Oh, is the earth his footstool? He must have feet. Now, of course, the charlatans will say, oh, no. No anthropomorphism. You can't say God is this, you can't say that. That's because when they speak of God, they're talking about the illimitable one. And when the Kabbalists are talking about God, they're talking about his garments and malbush. Malbush, garment, clothing, vessel, right? A way he's perceivable. So, does he have a malbush that has eyes? Yes. Malbush that has face? Yes. Yes. In fact, that's one of the interpretations of the word partsuf. It can be interpreted as faces. Faces. So these are all these levels exist, right? And this is what they're studying in Olam Chaba. So you go to Olam Chaba, what's the purpose of the Torah? The Torah does not come to relay anything physical anymore, like material mitzvot don't exist up there. There is no such thing as kosher, animal meat, killing, schlitz, none of that stuff. None of that stuff exists at the highest levels. In Olam Chaba, the Torah is only talking about the primordial creation. There is no such thing as murder and kosher this, kosher that. That doesn't exist. That's all foolish nonsense for us here in the 52 grade, which is called Malchus. 52 grades value Bahima because we're like a beast, like an ignorant beast that has no understanding about anything divine. Therefore, the Torah is interpreted to keep beast nature in check, so we don't, cause more suffering than is needed. So I'm going to share with you guys a couple more examples of some of the Ilan, and then I'll go into some of the understandings about where we can obtain the scroll, blank scroll from, and what the first thing on the scroll should be. Yes, that is the interesting question there, Ayala. It's hard to depict a multidimensional Kabbalah understanding into a two-dimensional Ilan, isn't it? Yes, that would be true. However, as I show you these Ilanot, and I show you, for example, Olam HaMalbush, and I show you the various other levels on there, you will find that there's consistency across the board, which means that at the highest levels, all of the Kabbalists are in agreement because it's the same system, same source. And of course, the Ilan can never depict properly the multidimensional Olamot, because essentially every Ilan is dealing with 10 plus dimensions at any given time. Literally 10 dimensions. The human brain cannot even process that type of information. And that's exactly why the Ilan exists. So for example, like if I can ask you guys, like picture a person in your mind. Maybe you see a person. Picture 10 people in your mind. Okay? Picture 100 people in your mind. It's difficult. 1,000 people in your mind. 10,000 people, 1,000,000. Right. The brain, we don't even have the software. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the cachet. We don't have the human capacity to comprehend it. It's not possible. Which is why the Elons even exist in the first place. The Elons exist because they are capable of capturing levels of consciousness that are beyond human capability. The human brain is not capable of processing all of these levels at one time. And in order to help guide the consciousness along, in order to keep it within certain parameters, certain guidelines, certain levels of understanding, certain levels of relations and interactions, the Elons exist. That helps it. So here's another example. This is another prime example from Italy. I just want you guys to go. I'm going to show you guys a picture of the face so you guys can see the face of the king, just like it has been known to you about those who know about the secret of the heart spark. Right? And you see the face of the king on the picture I just sent to you. I want you guys to just look for a moment. It says Keter, right? Keter de Adam Kadmon, the Kether of Adam Kadmon. Having an understanding of this picture, I'd like to just divert your attention to another tikkun that you will find inside of the Sefer, the large Sefer filled with tikkunim, that called Sefer Yira, or tikkunim, tikkunei Yira, which are called the tikkuns of awe. That's what this most recent Sefer is called, but I will avert your attention here. Okay, so I'd like you guys to just look at the Sefer, the picture that I just sent there. Okay. Right? So anyone who's looking at the picture within inside of the Simsum, they will immediately see the exact same image. Kether, the Adam Kadmon, the relationships, the Partufim underneath it. I just sent to you guys an image of the Partufim of Zarinpin. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the consistency of the Partufim of Zarinpin. So just as you guys see it there, I'm going to show you as Rabbi Kaduri depicts the Partuf of Zarinpin. Okay. There's as Rabbi Kaduri produces Partuf Zarinpin. You will find it there on the golden Ilan, Partuf Zarinpin. And in Likutei, for those of you guys that have it, I will show you the same there. So for those of you that have been studying Likutei, you will find the keys on page, just a moment. So you'll find the diagram on page 254. So just so you guys can see there as well.
Yeah, the understanding from the Golden Ilan is that it was made either by a disciple or a disciple of the Arizal, and it was essentially passed down from one Rav to another 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 Rav, etc. And it ultimately ended up in my hands. And I do know some I am very interconnected. You would be surprised at some of the people that I teach. I cannot name them or even give hints as to who those people are due to the respect of their privacy, and because, as they joked, if I ever went to the community, they'd have to burn it to the ground. Similarly, if anyone ever found out who those people were, well, look what they do to me now. I'm a Rasha. But nonetheless, they would be terrified if they knew the people that learned from me. And none of them are in this group, obviously. The public group and these private groups are for the public, not for the closed circle. But I digress. Yeah, that's the Ilan. So it came into my hands, and I'm its caretaker for now. So I'll go through a couple more pieces of the Ilanot before we go into how to begin the process of the creation of one, and I'll provide you guys a resource to help you all out. So here's some examples of Simsumim. So I'll avert your attention to the photo I just posted in there. This is a you'll see this type of style of the concept of Simsum, which came out mainly out of the school within Safed, and it was known as the Iyun circle. So if you guys take a look, they are Hebrew letters. So it's a kaf, then a chet, right? Then a base. Why? Because Keter, Chokma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisad, and Malchus. So the first letter of all the Sfirot are essentially enveloping each other, and that creates the image of the Simsum. I'd like you guys to just divert your attention back up to the page from Likutei on page 254. If you look at the page of Likutei on page 254 and open it up all the way, it doesn't show. If you just look at the image what's inside the chat, it doesn't quite show. But actually click on the image. On the bottom half, you should see Keter Hokma, Bina, Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisad, and Malchus. The exact same Simsum as it relates to the Iyun circle. Now, Likutei is at a terrifying level. It's at a terrifying level. I've had people go off and study for a very long time, many different things, and to come back and be absolutely horrified at the levels that Likutei is at. Because the levels that the Sefer is at, they're not exactly verifiable. Perfect, Gila. Thank you for showing the image. Yeah, 100%. So if you see it's a kaf enveloping a chet, right, and enveloping a base for binah, enveloping a dalet with das, and it just continues like this. And it's a representation of Simsum, specifically the second Simsum, right? Anyone who knows Rav Naftali's Emek HaMelech, again, which is written in Aramaic, so no one in the Western world knows. But nonetheless, it talks about Simsumim, right? Multiple Simsums. There are multiple Simsums. No. So there's the first Simsum, second Simsum, third Simsum. There are the three layers of Yud Vav Dalet. So this is just an example of some of the things, and I'm bringing this stuff into light here and just talking about it. Here's another example of a Simsum here, with inside of another Ilan that was held inside of a chain. And this is the level of restriction, just so you guys can see some of the validity. Because inside of Likutei itself, I don't go into these levels because it's not really imperative for the historicity, meaning the historical, legitimacy of all of these things. The intention of Likutei is not to establish the legitimacy of its teachings. It's to show the light of the teachings. And because it's to show the light of the teachings, I skip all of the secular nonsense and get straight into the esoteric sod. It's somewhat, and perhaps this wasn't, perhaps I could have done this in a better way, but it was not intentional
and it was, I guess, somewhat pre-assumed that the people reading Likutei would be aware of its level of initiation. It's a level of mastery over the highest levels of the Kabbalah. And that the tikkunim within inside of it, to the trained and learned eye, would be self-evident and not need defense or anything like that. So we've gone through some of these levels. I'll just go within a couple of aspects, show you a couple more images. There we go. Here's another image here. We'll get an image right here of nice Partsufim of a Rikain pin. Right? Here's a Partsufim of a Rikain pin. I'll show you it on Rabbi Kaduri's Rikain pin, which is right there. So you can see the consistency, and I'll show it to you on the golden Ilan. I do have a light on, so I do forgive that. I place a light on the backside of the Ilan. When the light is off, obviously you can see it inside of the engraved gold. Maybe I will cut it off and show you. Give me a second. Okay. So using the golden Ilan as a representation, there we go. Here's another image, and it's perfect. The consistency is key. Consistency is key. Right? When you know the true and authentic systems, then you can go back 1,000 years into the past and behold the different Ilan and the sages, and they're all in agreement. There's no divergence. The divergence only comes as a result of ignorance and the unlearned, especially when it comes to the matters of the 231 gates. I will provide a key from an Ilan Gedal about the 231 gates, just for everyone to have a better glimpse of context, so you guys can see that, especially for those of you that read Hebrew. I sent in 2 images. Okay. So hopefully this will enlighten you all to the matters at hand. Okay, so now that we've gone through some of the Ilans, seen a glimpse of the history of them, and of course there are many more Ilanot that can be displayed that reveal all of these matters. Perhaps I can share one more of them. You can see here from another Ilan, if you just avert your attention to the right-hand side of the picture I just sent in. Has anyone made an Ilan with the Klipothic side? So I have an esoteric Ilan that has the Klipothic side. The answer to that is yes. Has it ever been shown to the Western world? No. I've been very privileged to have access to safers that are only in manuscript form, passed down from master to teacher. For example, I have access to Tikkun HaChoshek, which the Western world doesn't even know about. Some people attribute the sefer to the burned book of Rav Nachman of Breslov. I don't know if you guys anyone here knows about that story, but Rav Nachman of Breslov essentially had his book that was, great decrees were sent upon him from Olam Haba, that he should die, his children should die, he'd be sick, afflictions of sickness and this and that. And he knew it came from the book, so he went and had it burned. It's called the Burned Book of Rav Nachman of Breslov. You should go look that up. Some people say that it was Tikkun HaChoshek. Now, Tikkun HaZohar means the tikkuns of the radiance, and Tikkun HaChoshek is tikkuns of the darkness. Now, I have direct access to Tikkun HaChoshek. This is why when it comes to the Sita Achra, it's not even we're not even playing the same game. I mean, this is why I was able to tell you Bereshis is a 42 name, which is his value of Ashura, so on and so forth. And some of the keys that I've shown you all in Tikkun HaChoshek are the absolute highest levels of the Klipot. The entire purpose of Tikkun HaChoshek, it's a sefer has 132 tikkuns. It's actually to break the power of the Klipot, not to empower it, to break it. It's 132 tikkuns, Im Kalel, 1 over the value of Samael, 131. But it reveals the absolute highest levels of the Sita Achra, orders of emanation and things like this. Absolutely staggering. And interestingly enough, it's in Likutei. It's in Likutei. It's the only place that it exists in, is in Likutei. because there's a level of above the Kabbalah that deals with the klipot, because the husk precedes the fruit. This is why I said to a certain person that the Lurianic Kabbalah was inferior. It was inferior because they're essentially dealing with levels of tikkun. I mean, Chaim Vital says this himself. Eitz Chaim is only from levels of Ab and Iman below. Respectfully, anyone who's done an unbiased read of Eitz Chaim knows that Chaim Vital says that everything that's inside of Eitz Chaim is from the levels of Ab and Ima and below, and everything above that is simply speculative. And that was rightfully said, because those levels would not be brought down until much later safers. And one of them, which is circulated and regarded as one of the most esoteric safers to have ever been written, it's almost impossible to get your hands on. You cannot get it in the Western world. There is no way to get it in the Western world at all. It's impossible. And even in the Jewish world, there are places that have like rabbinic partheids on it. To even try to get this safer is very, 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 very difficult. And it's called Sefer Beria, right? Sefer Beria. Nobody has it. I only know one person aside from myself who has it. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And it talks about it explains things that are above Eitz Chaim. Right? About primordial creation, the husk preceding the fruit, the simsum, the cold environment, so on and so forth. All these things are like kind of tied into that. Because Rav Nachman, even though he had, right, so you figure he's a grandson of Baal Shem Tov. So they had access to some of the highest, loftiest levels. You know, I talk about the Turkey Prince, right? Rav Nachman of Breslov wrote the Turkey Prince, and for those of you that want an unbiased key, you know, that was written by Jakob Frank. Jakob Frank revealed the story of the Turkey Prince. Why is Rav Nachman of Breslov quoting Jacob Frank? Retelling the same story. Why? That's a good question. Jakob Frank was Baal Shem Tov's number one arch nemesis. You know, if one of them is like Luke Skywalker, the other one's Darth Vader or Lord Sidious. He was not able to overpower Jakob Frank, as is self-admitted. He was not able. He actually lost hope trying to debate him. He felt hopeless. Go read the Tales of Chassidus. For any of you that wish to be educated on the matter, go read the Tales of Chassidus. They talk about him in there. Terrifying figure. Nonetheless, of course, they would have been aware of those teachings of Frank and Tzvi, without question. Without question. I mean, any person who logically does a debate on their opponent, does research on their opponent. But go read this. Go see what they say about Baal Shem Tov and Rav Israel and Jakob Frank. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. In fact, anyone who's really, really unbiased, go look at the bizarre things that Jakob Frank even did. There are stories of Rabbanan who are in the Beis Din in Yerushalayim who make reports that Jakob Frank, he said things like, if I brought your parents back from the dead and they came in here and said, I'm Mashiach, would you believe? And all of a sudden the rabbi's parents back from the dead come into the place. He sees his own parents, and his parents look at Jakob Frank and say he's Mashiach. Right? That kind of stuff. Right? Spooky, terrifying stuff. You look in unbiasedly. Go look. You look at the history of that stuff. It's terrifying. You have to think it's all charlatanry. You have to think modern mind would just think it's all just tomfoolery, foolishness, just absurd, too insane. You mean the rabbi's own parents came back from the dead? He reanimated them and brought them in there, and they say he's Mashiach? And to his face? Terrifying. Yeah, there's more to that story. Nonetheless, I digress from the levels of people just to adjust onto that point. Yes, Jakob Frank is where Frankism comes from. Yes, they have a version of the Kabbalah that is terrifying. You have to be an absolute Lurianic grandmaster to even touch the outer surface of Frankism or true Frankish understanding, right? Baal Shem Tov could not challenge him. Go read the Tales of Chassidus. He failed to overcome him. He was terrified, right? There are a couple of people in here that know, and I've revealed just subtle keys to the level. But should you ever know what those real levels are, you would know why the world is the way it is. You would know all the conspiracy theories. You would know why it all exists. Every little thing, down to the weird, bizarre P. Diddy parties and the Epstein Islands and all that other stuff. You would know. I'm not talking about the conspiracy theorists, because none of them know anything. Every person who talks about Yaakov Frank, you know nothing. You know nothing. But the real teachings, yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. So, going back to Tikkun HaChoshek, inside of it has some of the loftiest keys, terrifying keys. Like, for example, I'll just give you a subtle example. The Milui of Samael is a numerical value of the word Shekhinah. Same value. So you take Samael and spell it out, it's the same value as Shekhinah. What is the numerical value of the word Malkut? Its numerical value as Samael HaNechash. Samael the serpent, same value. Right? These are the kinds of things, mind-blowing information to plug in. And when you start to understand those levels, it changes things. But those things are neither here nor there. And we kind of went off on the side to the Klipot, talking about those things. That's not the purpose of today's discussion. Nonetheless, I digress from that. There are hidden Ilanot that do deal with the Klipot, but none of them have ever been seen by the light of day. There's never been any photographs of them. They do not exist on the internet. And they, to this day, have been passed from master to student, as with most of these other very esoteric manuscripts, which have never been published in books. No need to apologize. So to give why this information is given to be known now, is because now is the time of Geulah. The time of the redemption is at hand. To speak very plainly, Aleph separates Mem from Shin is above Eitz Chaim. The very Sfirot themselves are defined by its aspects. Many people say this, many people say that. The tree on top of tree, the divine pattern. Do you have a tree of the face and a Keter, the tree of the body? 231 gates. Everyone has an opinion. But that just goes to show how lost this generation is, how foolish it is. The lack of humility, the lack of understanding. And a lot of this is coming from the frum world. You claim, okay, you said Chassidus. Okay, well, did you not learn anything about Midos? Your character attributes are horrible. Terrible, terrible time we live in. Terrible time we live in. It's a beautiful time, but a terrible time. It's a beautiful time because redemption is at hand. If you see Aleph separates Mem from Shin, this is the absolute highest levels. The absolute highest levels. It's terrifying how high the level is of it. But again, it's so simple. It's so simple to the intellect. It's very simple. But it's above the Eitz Chaim itself, Spatziros. So, let us go into how we can create the Ilan. We're about at that time. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys in here a link. Oh, no need to apologize. Blessed are those that see the truth. For those that see the truth, they get perplexed. They say, they look at the people who behold the das of Hashem, the truth of Hashem, and they expect you to capitulate to their emotional compensation, meaning their emotional reactions. Right? I feel a certain way. You should feel a certain way too. They tell you how to feel and what to think. And they expect you to react to that. And when you don't react to that, they become perplexed. I once told Gila, I said, as long as you keep your eyes on the message and not the messenger, you'll never be led astray. But if you keep your eyes on the messenger, you'll never see the message. If you look at me and point out what you perceive as flaws, or you look at me and see whatever your mind has concocted of me in your head, whatever your mind thinks of me, and you see that, you'll be blind all the days of your life. You'll never understand. But should you see the message, then you'll never be led astray, because either it's MS or it's not. Either every woman produces red, every male produces white, or no. The center column is yellow, or no. But if it is, and these things are indeed MS, then you know where the root of that came from, and that is God. And no prophet has ever proclaimed the things that I've proclaimed. Not a single one. They're like monkeys compared to the light that's coming down now. And indeed, the light that you've been made known to can make a prophet. Indeed, it can make a Yeshiach or Yechetzkel. Probably burns to hear a person say that. But I promise you that a person who beholds the glory of God indeed would become a prophet. So I've sent into a link into the group. This link will give you open access to a scroll. These are the best scrolls that I've seen so far. Not all of them are like the scrolls that I personally obtained, but they should assist you all and nonetheless fulfill the same function. You can get them as cheap as $25, so that means you can get them in a smaller size. If you're really seeking to map it out at the highest levels, you're going to need more length. To compensate for length, you can also do back and front. There's been people who've not been able to obtain an entire 45-foot Ilan, so they'll get a scroll that's 18 feet, and they'll do one side and then turn around and do the back side. This too is okay. So many people are, have different constraints, right? Not everybody can afford to do this or that. But nonetheless, start here. You can find, there's Amazon link right there. Obtain a scroll, obtain a sefer. That's the beginning. That's the beginning. In terms of ink, there's no specification to the ink that's needed to do this. If you wanted to go all the way out, you could write it with kosher ink, which obviously you cannot buy online. You'd have to know a sofer. I have a bottle of it. You could go so far as to make your own kosher pens, so on and so forth. You can carve the feather, so on and so forth, and do this. Or you can find your own style. I would caution you against pens that bleed. So stay away from pens that bleed, meaning they when you write with them, you can see them on the other side, unless your scroll is long enough to withstand that. If that is the case, then by all means use a pen that bleeds. But I would advise you against it if you're using a smaller scroll. Otherwise, you would want to use a type of archival ink, an ink that does not bleed. The other tips and notes that I will say before we end this call here is that the system will be step by step. So you want to learn step by step. You want to learn the most highest levels and the stages of existence. Because this is everyone's first Ilan, I've written many Ilanot. All of my Ilans are 45 feet. They're back in front, and I've written countless smaller Ilanot. Not all of them have I shared, but nonetheless, we'll start off with a scroll that captures the generalities. The first Ilan that you're laying down, it's not necessary. It's not necessary for us to go into all the deep specifics and get into all of these, intricate, amazing gematriot and all these other things. The purpose of the first scroll is to just lay down the generalities, so that way, if you decide to make a second Ilan, a second scroll, you will be able to go into specifics and deep dive. But having a generalized roadmap, an oversight, is critically important. It's critically important. So I will give you guys in general what the first thing that we would place on the scroll is, and explain the reasons behind it. And then perhaps I can take a couple of questions. But the first level is we want to describe the state of the endless in a fixed position. And so then therefore the crown jewel is always shown at the very top of every Ilan. If you look at any of my Ilanot, the crown jewel is at the very top of it. Sometimes it's concealed, sometimes it's revealed. I can perhaps give you guys an example of it being concealed as opposed to being revealed. So here's an example of the crown jewel as being concealed. but nonetheless is at the top of an Ilan. Okay. You should see a raven and a dove. For those of you that are learning the Zohar, you will know that the raven and the dove are the secrets of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, the Mashiachim. The crown in the middle is Roya Mehemna. And the letters are poised into the body, right? So there are various ways that you can artistically somewhat express this idea. Although for the first scroll, I would not recommend you do this. I would recommend you show the crown jewel as it is. That is the jewel on the top of a crown of a king. It's important to understand that a crown is a symbol of the king's authority. Sure. Go ahead. So this first level, at the highest level, we want to show the letters in a fixed position, because the endless essentially was in a fixed state, a static state of self-existence. There was no vacancy. There's nothing outside of that, right? So we know that the light of the 22 letters, which God forbid we think the 22 letters themselves are there, because they're not actually there. They are in principle. Likutei specifies this. One should not think even the letters are in this place, but rather that the essence or light of the letters, the principles themselves are in this place, and that they're in a great mystery of unity at the highest level. This is a level called the Ein. And so that'll be the first step. When you begin to create your Ilan, you first begin with this level, meaning providing the crown jewel and understanding first the interactions between all of the 22 letters. Because it's very important to understand why it's there. Not just simply copy it there, but learn about it to understand why it's there. Sometimes on some of my Ilan, I will also put on the left side column the 22 letters, or the 27 letters, we can include the 5 Sophist letters, with their numerical or gematria values. This is also important to understand because letters are numbers. Lashon HaKodesh, there's no numbers. It's all letters. This teaches us somewhat a concept behind programming language. Essentially, everything in a program is numbers. And so very similarly here, the letters are numbers, program. So that too may begin to understand. And the first thing that's encapsulated on the top of every Ilan is the concept of Elah separates Mem from Shin. Because it's the first and foremost principle of the fixed positions. So when the time comes for us to actually start revealing Elah separates Mem from Shin, when it starts to reveal the crown jewel and reveal these letters at the very top of the Ilanot, we'll discuss this concept more in depth. But for now, this should be enough of a generic overview. Don't want to go any further into the matters until the friends have an opportunity to obtain them for themselves in an actual Ilan. Because of the length of time that it takes to order a scroll, let's say you order it today, probably won't be here for 3 or 4 weeks. They have to ship from outside of the country because there's nowhere inside of the country that actually produces scrolls that would suffice for such a task here in the States. And you definitely don't want to cheap on quality. You want to make sure that it's right. And fortunately, the Chinese do it very, very good. Been making scrolls for a very long time. Now, if you wanted to go super crazy, you can do goat skin. I've done goat skin and stuff like that, but I don't recommend you do that. Definitely not for a first scroll. Maybe in the future when you've got to that level. But nonetheless, that'll conclude our first call for now. The basic principles or the basic understandings or tenets that you should take away from today's call is the understanding about some of the historicity behind Ilanot, to understand the importance and significance of them, right? And to see its trace lineage throughout various stages of history, and to see that great Chachamim and sages have all had them, and to understand the importance of why it's a necessity. Because at the highest level, Kabbalah, true Kabbalah, is a science. It's a science that's already figured out. There's no adding to it or taking from it. There's no philosophical insight to be had about it. It is a precise science. When I tell you that your center column produces yellow because it's an exact science. When I tell you every female produces red because it's an exact science. When I tell you that every male produces white, it's because it's an exact science. When I tell you Ayla separates men from Shin, it's because it's an exact science. This science regarding the Ilanot was essentially lost. There were only select few. And when I mean select few, I'm talking about maybe a dozen in the world. 12. Billions of people on this planet, maybe 12, have maintained it. Rav Kaduri was one of them. There are others. None of them here in the United States, for sure. You can do parchment scrolls. I see James asking a question. You can do parchment scrolls, but then again, just understand, when you're writing your first Ilan, don't do more than what you're capable of doing. You can do glass Shoshana for sure. I mean, there's people who've done these types of things in a safer. There's many different ways to do it. That'll be a very interesting thing. I mean, perhaps one day there'll be a yeshiva, and perhaps your stained glass will be on display somewhere, and the light will be shining in the radiance of the Ilanot. Okay, everybody. That'll go ahead and conclude it. The main takeaways from today's lesson is to just show you the importance of the legitimacy of having an Ilan, tracing its historicity throughout the last 1,000 years or so, and to also forewarn you to be very cautious about listening to people who quote unquote know Kabbalah, because again, this is absurd, saying you make a profit and all those other things. And if they don't have that Ilan, then they're 100 billion% discredited. 1 billion% do not know what they're talking about. They only speak from ego and foolishness, the error of ignorance. If they do not have that, they have no merit to speak on it. That means their opinions are worthless. I should also help strengthen and encourage you. Is when many people are being exposed to this type of material, they experience grief. What are the stages of grief? Denial, anger, sorrow, bargaining, right? And that's what you experience when you try to tell people about these levels. People lash out at you. They're in denial. They're bargaining about this or that. And it's all foolishness, nonsense. So be strengthened. Don't fear. Keep your eyes on the message. Be led astray. Okay, everybody. Many, many, many blessings. This will conclude this first call. Hashem willing, we will convene again. Please, if you guys obtain the prerequisites for your Ilan now, then we can get started hopefully within a 3-week period. I do plan to have another call with you all perhaps next week, Hashem willing, and we can go into some of the more specifics on it. So, as David Amelech said, open my eyes and I behold the ones of your Torah. Amen, amen. Many blessings. Shalom, salam.
Amen.
Shalom. Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.